Well, this morning of September the 25th, and we have a few things going on here. I'll get into later. I want to talk a little bit about the audit in Arizona, but first I want to address this issue about the Border Patrol and Biden that's come up here. I mean, we had this gigantic influx of Haitians who really weren't even from Haiti. They were from South America. They'd already fled Haiti, and apparently had already achieved asylum in several countries in South America, and got the signal that the door was open in the south, so they all got in a big caravan and came across at Del Rio, Texas. I'm sure you all saw that story. And now, of course, there was an incident in which a small number of Border Patrol, 4 or 5, I forget the exact number, on horses, confronted a large crowd trying to get across the river, and they, at any rate, they were, kind of using the horses just sort of as a blunt. They weren't actually attacking them with the horses. This is often used in certain types of police crowd control. I've seen this in, many cities. Mad police kind of use the horse, which is a big body, and people move back from the horse. So it avoids a hand-to-hand conflict with law enforcement, in order to control a larger number of people. Whereas on the other hand, if you were on foot, they'd be much more likely to struggles developing between the law enforcement and and whoever they're dealing with. In this case, the illegal immigrants. And so the horses have reins, and apparently when they want the horse to move forward but not to go forward, they don't want the horse to go forward too strong because they don't want it to run over anybody. They just want to step forward a little bit. They apparently got a signal where they kind of, wave the reins around a little bit, and the horse moves forward a little bit. They use it to signal the horse. And apparently the horses are trained and they work pretty well with that. Well, what do you call them? The racist agitators seized upon this and said, "Oh, they're whipping these people," and of course, because they happen to be of African descent, the normal race hustlers go to full bore and jump on this story. And now the Biden administration, and I can kind of explain why I think they're doing it, decided that they wanted to jump on this and make a big issue of it now. So the other day I was very surprised to hear that Biden is saying that he's going to make these agents pay for this. Okay. And now there already was going to be an investigation. So now if you're the person doing the investigation, you got the president saying you got to make these people pay. To me, that's kind of biasing the jury, so to speak. And that's what's going on right now with that. And we'll see how that all turns out. But I think phase one for the agents doesn't look too good because of the bias here. Ultimately, they're probably going to have to go to court, and I presume they have some kind of it sounds like it isn't called a union, but they have an association of stuff, and they got spokespeople who are behaving like union leaders. So I assume that that's who will only have to support these people if they're going to, go to court, because they probably may have to. And we'll see if that gets to that point, but that's kind of the way I think it could be heading. But the point is that actually what they were doing was just the opposite of running them down. They were trying to control the horses so the horse would just move forward and kind of put a physical presence there and sort of deter the foreign movements of these people to keep them from getting around them, but not necessarily, they definitely didn't want any physical contact to occur between them and the horse. Okay, and so that's, of course, Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Director, who basically said the right thing when he was down the border, has now been told to say something else, and that's his claim is he hadn't seen the video at that time, and now he's so utterly shocked because he knows it just brings up these vivid images of the past that he's also obsessed with. Yeah, right. This is all made up, totally, like almost all this race hustling we have in this country. So because quite the contrary, this country is not systemically racist, it's systemically anti-racist, meaning that the system, the laws, the procedures, the organizations, the companies in this country all have strong anti-racist policies, and have had even before anybody ever heard of critical race theory in the public domain. I mean, they've had what they call diversity programs, they've had affirmative action, they've been doing this for basically all of my life, practically, at least as long as I would be interested in the job market. And And so effectively, this is all a bunch of hooey, but it's done to deceive the African American community. And why are they going so hyper at this moment? Well, looking at the latest Rasmussen polls detail, the Friday number for black support for Biden is 49%. And Biden wants something closer to 90%. That includes strong and weak support at 49%. Now, I will caution that when you deal with a poll, it's plus or minus 3% accuracy, and you go to a subgroup of about 13% of the polling set, you're going to have a much wider variance. And so, but it's been kind of consistently heading down for some time. If multiple polls are showing the same kind of thing and going that direction, it's not a direction that any Democrat administration wants to have. And so I think that's why they're blowing this up beyond all proportion. And so it really doesn't matter, they don't really care what happens to individual agents, which I don't know what their ethnicity is. They may very well be Latino. I mean, a lot of the border agents are Latino, and from the pictures, I can't tell. So I don't have any idea. I don't know their names. But I'm saying that attacking the Border Patrol in general, I think, on the other hand, there's a bigger group that they need to, keep voting for them, and they may be offending those individuals. At any rate, we'll have to see how this develops, but it's another sad story. By the way, if you like these videos, remember to give me a like because it helps with the algorithm and gets more people able to see them. And if subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and you can click the bell for notifications. So anyhow, that's that. I just was pretty incensed by the whole thing, and we'll be hearing more about this, I'm sure, as the investigation goes forward. Or it's also possible, I guess, that they might realize that they're kind of in the wrong deal and drag out the investigation and kind of let it go. And, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if they actually fire them and then to sustain that in a court challenge, I don't know. I mean, because I'm sure that there probably will be some court issues over it if it gets to that point. So anyhow, on the other issue that is probably worth taking a quick look at is on the big spending issue, which I kind of been discussing in the last video quite a bit. We really have no major new developments as far as we can tell. The government funding runs out on the October the 1st, which means you got to have a continuing resolution to keep all the non-essential functions of government going. And then of course the Democrats have stated that they've come up with some kind of a deal on the funding mechanism for their big spending program, which will fund whatever they need to do. On the other hand, the details have not been released as far as I can tell, and I think that Biden himself admitted that his whole policy is kind of hung up at the moment in Congress. So it's unclear exactly what the status is on that, but the clock is ticking and they haven't got it passed yet. And so that's interesting to note. We don't know whether or not our two Democrat senators that have been opposing this have caved, or has the administration just putting out a cover story? Because I can't see how you can have enough, taxes to cover this gigantic spending program, and at the same time not have had all these people on board. Because, even what I've heard so far doesn't look to me like it really will cover what they're planning on spending. And so we just don't know yet on that. But I think that's interesting how it's gone kind of quiet. And of course, I guess we're still waiting to see what action they're going to take on the first bipartisan bill, which did have the support of Republicans in the Senate, on infrastructure, which is supposed to be mostly roads, bridges, and that sort of thing, although there's a bunch of other stuff in it too. It's not nearly as odious as the bill that they're working on for the $3.5 trillion, but it is, there are bad things in that. And I think another thing to look at is, I understand they put some kind of a red flag law was stuck into the Defense Authorization Act. And well, I think that, as I understand, that's sort of giving the military justice system the same kind of rules like they have in states like Florida, that if some sort of a threatening complaint comes up, they can seize people's firearms, personal firearms, pending a hearing. Okay. the downside of that again is, well, there's a lot of different downsides. The one I'm most issued, I think, is most relevant is the fact that it's a non-due process thing. Somebody can make an accusation totally false, you know. And I tend to think these are going to occur a lot in breakups in relationships, is where I'm thinking they probably would be most likely to occur, particularly divorce proceedings. Because the person filing for divorce wants to trash the other person as much as possible legally in order to get a better outcome in the final divorce settlement, right? I mean, maybe they themselves don't really want to do that, but their lawyer recommends it, and you know how that goes. And people are probably not thinking the most emotionally clearly when they decide to do these things, and they're angry, and so things like this would happen. That's one of the things I think that's bad. The other thing, of course, is if somebody's just not liked and was by somebody in officialdom, they can try to use things like this. And of course, but at any rate, they're trying to bring that. I'm kind of going off the subject here. I'm talking, but that's what was in the bill apparently, among other things. It got some pushback. You always have to watch out for these big bills because that's where they slip the stuff in. and that's so. And given that the Democrats have control of the Senate, it's maybe hard to get it out. You know, it'd be completely different if you had just one more vote in the Senate and a majority on all the committees. You might be able to remove it in the committee, and that never could get back in, and then they'd have to handle it in the compromise process. But so anyhow, that sort of hits that subject, and we're just kind of moving ahead here with various developments, and you have, I guess, a lot of attention's been on this laundry case, which I guess he's finally. I didn't really get into this much, and it's kind of it's a sad story, but it looks to me like it's a real question to me: is he really in that swamp or not? And now I heard a rumor this morning that somebody saw somebody looking like him in Canada, which probably doesn't mean anything really, but they have a picture which looks kind of fuzzy. So I thought that was an interesting little sidelight on all this thing. But it is another example of these laws that take away all discretion from law enforcement because of when they were stopped in Laundry and his fiancee Gabby there, Patino or whatever. They were stopped out in Utah, and they had one of these must arrest laws, and they were and all the physical evidence indicated that she'd attacked him, and so it left her in a position where she might be arrested for domestic abuse. Even though, as we can see in the big picture, apparently that's not the total picture here, so to speak, given that she ended up dead a few days later. It's now been ruled a homicide. So it kind of goes to show how these rules can kind of backfire and not using a little bit of sense there, so to speak. But anyhow, another aspect of the ongoing situation, and we'll just have to hang in there and see what happens next. We can just hope that the $3.5 trillion bill fails, because we really don't want to set up all these programs. Because remember, this is just the amount of money in a given fixed period of time during the budget bill that they'll take up. If these programs are put in place, it'll be politically hard to get rid of them, and so they will go on eternally, more or less, And that's why that has a lot of focus, I think, on the pushback. And why I was not that worried about the $1.2 trillion bill, which doesn't have exactly that characteristic to it. So at any rate, again, you can follow me on social media, particularly on Twitter, although I post from time to time on Parler and Gab as well. And we'll have to, in fact, speaking of that, something else I didn't bring up, I understand that some hackers hacked the servers that some of these websites are on, particularly Parler and Gab, but also a variety of other, let's say, more extreme websites and groups. I think Alex Jones and things like that are on this Epic or something like that. And it got hacked by some bunch of left-wing hackers, and so they're trying to create a situation, arguing that they haven't provided the kind of security that I guess that these providers are supposed to have. And so there is a threat out there that they'll try to get the government in a very extremely objective Biden administration will try to drive them out of business. So I don't know what the probabilities on that are. Let's hope it don't happen, because we need some alternatives to Twitter, although I post frequently on Twitter. And I think basically at this point, because of my demeanor and the fact that I'm still only have slightly over 200 followers on Twitter, I'm probably not enough of an issue to want to censor at this point. But you never know, they'll make the wrong statement. So anyhow, I just mentioned that's another threat that's looming out there as the regime tries to, clamp down on free speech. Well, anyway, I'll close this for now, and until next time. Oh, excuse me, I ended the thing and I forgot to mention I was going to address the issue of the of Arizona audit. And at least briefly, I might do something more detail about it as more facts come out, but I had a preliminary look at it. As we all heard, the mainstream media, or as I call them, the Democrat media, immediately went out and say that the audit confirmed that the Biden majority actually increased by a few hundred votes over what had been the official count. And I think this is kind of interesting. Well, all the effort the Democrats been going on about how biased and unfair this audit was, it turns out that apparently it wasn't that biased and unfair. They do raise some serious issues, though, about the question that there's a much bigger group of votes that are questionable basically would be enough to potentially swing the election one way or the other if they had a strong skew in one direction or the other. In other words, if those other votes were all primarily Biden votes and they were done by people that had moved out of state and were no longer legally voters there, or were illegal aliens or something of that sort, the dead and so forth. If those votes were primarily for Biden and were thrown out, it might be enough to switch it to Trump. And I think that's the issue that's kind of out there. However, here's the problem, that this will probably never be developed, and it's really practically too late to do anything about it anyhow. So other than there's recommendations in there to kind of tighten up some of the election rules and all that in order to prevent things like that in the future. The key thing is to make sure that we have a little bit better handle on who's allowed to vote and so forth. But at any rate, that's kind of the outcome of it. It's sort of, ultimately, it's probably going to turn into mainly a big non-event. The thing so we'll just take a look at that later, but I thought I'd mention, that was something I did want to mention, that it did come out, and I suppose it's only going to disappoint a lot of people. But again, I don't think that the problem ever was with the counting. I think the question is really, is there an issue of allowing illegal voters to vote? And since we don't have a really good handle on establishing citizenship in this country, like we should have, we have all kinds of illegals that we discussed earlier running around the country. This is going to be an ongoing problem. Well, at any rate, I will close this for now, and sorry that I forgot to put that in like I promised, but it'll be in there now.